Jo.
Hi, Lorraine. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you too. We've both got sunshine.
Yes, yes. I mean, I have sunshine every day, so it's not unusual for me, but you're in the UK, so it's like hit and miss, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Maybe you could start by introducing yourself to everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jo, and I'm one of the teachers here at Intrepid English. I've been teaching English for a long time. I was trying to work out in my head. My first teaching job was in 1997. So that's quite a while. I've worked teaching in lots of different countries on a couple of boats. Now I'm going to talk to you about some of the IELTS teaching that I've been doing over the years and that we're going to continue doing now.
Great, thank you. I love how you say I've taught in several countries and a couple of boats.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other story. So to give the viewers a bit of context, you actually started teaching with Intrepid English several years ago, and that was during COVID, right? And so we had this excellent idea for you to use your amazing traveling experience, but we were all in lockdown at the same time. So you did this amazing series from Google Earth where you revisited the places that you'd actually been in your life, but via Google Earth, so that we could experience it with your narration, but from the confines of our lockdown houses.
I really enjoyed doing that. Yeah, it was really good fun. I was learning with the technology, and that was a challenge at times. But yeah, revisiting my travels from the bedroom that I was working in, that was good. I
Yeah.
appreciate being able to do that as part of my work. It was cool. Thank you.
Yeah, if we can remember, it seems so long ago now, doesn't it? But at the time, everyone was having to navigate new technology. Everyone was having to do everything they'd normally done in person, but online. So everyone was just figuring it out. And I think that, that's great. It was a great idea and it was great for you. And we all enjoyed it as well. So I'll have to actually drop the link to that series on YouTube and then watch it again myself because there were some really, really
Yeah,
cool places in there.
I'm a bit scared of rewatching them. It might trigger a few things, memories of lockdown.
Yeah. So today I really wanted to focus on the IELTS with you because you are someone who has taught IELTS preparation for several years with various students from different countries as well. So I really wanted your input into this. And if there's a particular area of the IELTS you're really keen to teach, and even, if you've got any tips for English learners who are preparing for the IELTS exam so that we can help them to feel more confident on exam day.
So my first IELTS teaching was probably about 20 years ago, and I had a big classroom full of students from all over the world. We did all of the four papers together. We did lots of practice on each of them. But then, unfortunately, the class finished and they all went off and did their IELTS exams, and I never found out what their results were. So, but that was my introduction to teaching IELTS, and it was like the full spectrum. Since then, I've focused more on the IELTS speaking, and I've done a lot of that online. My most recent student was a huge success, and I would
Tell me.
say that was because of his extreme hard work. He was very, very dedicated, and
Right.
he was somebody who started with maybe perhaps a band five kind of speaking, 5 or 5.5. And in the end, he got a band eight. And,
Wow.
but that was, in my opinion, that was a transformation in his confidence of being able to
Mm.
do it. And also our repeated training on what exactly the papers look like and what the tasks are. So we did
Yeah.
many hours of lessons where we'd go through each of the papers and we'd do the practices on repeat. And his English at the beginning, his English was way above a 5.5, but because he
Mm.
was stressed and uncomfortable and didn't know the exam format so much, he was not performing naturally. And then
Mm.
just the continued practice made him really boost his score. And the transformation was just incredible. And I really enjoyed it. And he really enjoyed it. And we got a real buzz of kind of every lesson, just seeing that get higher and higher. So I was
Great.
so proud of him. I remember he got his results over the summer and he phoned me. I think he did his IELTS exam and then he got in a camper van and went on a road trip. And he got his results a few days later from some mountains somewhere. And he called me from the mountains, really overjoyed to tell me what his results were. So yeah,
That's
very proud of him.
amazing.
Yeah. And that's what I
Yeah.
love about doing this job. I love helping them to do that transformation for themselves because he had it all in him. You know,
Mm.
I definitely gave him all the hints and I told him about all the criteria that you're graded on, like the fluency and coherence, lexical
Mm.
resource. I'm just reading these grammatical range and accuracy and the pronunciation. All of those are
Mm.
key, but you can find out about those by doing a Google search. You can find out that there's a list of these things that you have to do,
Mm.
but actually practicing and having somebody review your practice and saying, perhaps here you could have added in some higher level vocabulary or
Mm.
that those kind of hints and feedback
Just to level up the answer.
yeah, absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. So yeah, he was brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah, one of my successes
Yeah.
of many. I've
Oh,
had
that's such a
many.
lovely story. Brilliant. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And just as a little, reminder to the students, when you get the result you want, tell your teacher, right? We're as
Please do,
invested in this as you are.
please
We
do.
want to know how well you've done.
I had a reminder in my calendar, and I was thinking, shall I message him? Am I going to wait for him to message me? And then yeah, we were both like, yay! It was so exciting. Yeah, and what that means is that he can now. He was doing the general training IELTS for immigration purposes, and he's
Mhm.
now able to move to Canada. So that's
Amazing.
a life
Amazing.
changing, a life changing thing. And
Yeah.
so these are my mixed feelings about IELTS
Mhm.
because I'm not a fan of exams, but at the same time, getting the IELTS band score that you want can transform your life because it means you can go and study where you want to study or you can live where you want to live. It's a hoop that we have to jump through to be able to get to the next stage that we want to have an amazing new life experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the IELTS exam, there are two different types. There's the general and the academic. And for studying in the UK, for example, you need the academic. But also you need the academic IELTS exam if you want to get certain jobs. If you want to get a job in the NHS in the UK, you have to now have a 7.5 in the IELTS academic exam. No matter what job you want to do in the NHS, you have to get that 7.5 band, and which is the same as an MBA, to study an MBA at Warwick University. So that the level is really, really high. And a lot of people think that it's too high for a lot of the jobs. It's not necessary to do a lot of the jobs in the NHS, but those are the requirements. So for people who want to work in a country like Canada, the USA, the UK. These are the hoops that you have to jump through, as you say. So it's about understanding what you want to achieve, what transformation you want to go through, and then having a teacher who understands exactly what's needed to get you there. I think that's a really, really important thing. And it's possible, even if you need to go, as you say, from 5 to 8. It's possible with the right guidance. And I really enjoyed what you said there about the marking criteria, because a lot of the time people study online, they go to YouTube. Great, there's loads of great resources on YouTube. There's a lot of terrible resources on YouTube as well. So going there, not really understanding what you need to do, not having a structure, and then not really knowing why you need to do certain things. So this is where the marking criteria comes in. It doesn't just tell you what you need to do, as in you need to do a writing exercise now, but it tells you this is what the examiners are looking for. And if you understand why you need to do a certain thing, then you can achieve it much more easily. But otherwise, it's just complicated. It's just difficult, and you kind of lost without the structure. So I think it's really important to have the support of an experienced teacher, but also understand what the marking criteria are so that you can then understand, okay, well, this is the answer I've come out with. This would be a band 5. I actually need to get a band 7.5 for my visa requirements. So what do I need to do to step it up by 2.5? So I think marking criteria is really important. And we'll come back to that in a moment as well. So I'd love for you to talk about the speaking part of the IELTS exam. What are your tips for someone who has never done the IELTS before? They don't know what to expect. What would you say to them other than just try not to panic? Like what kind of advice would you give to them so that they know what steps to take in order to get that band that they need?
Well, there's the preparation and then there's the actual day of the exam. For the preparation, I would suggest you must know what the format of the exam is. And it's not very complicated to know that, but some people think, well, for example, I can speak very good English. Some people think
Mhm.
I can speak good English, I can just go in there, and then they get blindsided by what they have to do. There are three different parts, and you need to know what is expected of you for those. So there's the first part where you do some kind of general English self-introduction, and that's for like
Right.
4 or 5 minutes, and your examiner will be asking you questions and you will be answering the questions. Now, one of my hints, don't memorize your answers. You'll sound like a robot or something from AI. And if you start memorizing and just producing reams of information that you is coming from here, firstly your eyes look different. If you're trying to memorize something, often you'll be looking up into a corner.
Mm.
But secondly, if your examiner thinks that you're just doing stuff that's memorized, they will try and trip you up. They
Mm.
will they will ask you questions that are, more complicated and stuff. So
Mm.
try and be natural, try and be prepared but not memorized. That's really
Right.
important for that part, because lots of people enter the IELTS with a speech, and that's not what the IELTS
Mm.
exam is for.
Yeah. Great.
The second part of the IELTS exam is you're given a cue card topic, and they'll give you something to speak about. You have a minute to prepare that, and then for 1 or 2 minutes, then you have to speak about that topic. I find that terrifying. And my main tip for that is there are so many different topics. You can get the list of the topics, but something that's very useful to do is just to time yourself speaking so you know what 1 minute feels like, because you've got so much pressure and stress from the exam. You don't need to keep on thinking, what's the time? What's the time? What's the time? You will know what the time is, and your examiner will
Mhm.
tell you when to stop. But making sure you have an awareness of how it feels to speak for between 1 and 2 minutes is a really good basic way of preparing for that.
Absolutely. Mm.
Once you've done the speaking for your 1 or 2 minutes about the topic, the examiner will ask you a couple of questions about it. Then your third part is when you have a follow on discussion with the examiner about what you were talking about in part two. And it gets deeper, more complicated, more abstract, and that lasts for 4 or 5 minutes. Some of them are things that you would never normally think about or have an opinion on, and that can be challenging for you. So you need to prepare yourself to, firstly, a good way of preparing yourself is to study as many of the possible topics and get as much practice talking about all these things as you possibly can.
Mm.
But another way is to think that the examiner knows that you might not know about the topic, but you
Yeah.
have to have the confidence to express yourself clearly and say, I'm not sure, but perhaps it could be this or perhaps it could be that.
Mhm.
So you can
Mhm.
investigate it using your band 9 English, and they will not be assessing you on whether you've got a degree level understanding of the topic. They will not
Yeah.
be wanting to know like quantum mathematics from you. They want to know if you can speak fluently and coherently about a topic, and not knowing something, but being able to come up with theories about something
Yeah.
is a really useful skill for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's really important for students to know when they're preparing for the IELTS exam is the whole point of both the general and the academic IELTS exams is to ensure that you're prepared, ready, you've got the language so that you can survive and hopefully thrive in the target country. Nobody has an opinion on everything. But if you have the ability to say, oh, I haven't really thought about that before, and keep the conversation going, that's the main thing. So in the Intrepid English Academy, we've got a course for the IELTS speaking exam specifically. And in there are the top 10 most common topics. So they go from, really common things like home, talking about your family, talking about your studies and things like that, to more abstract things like talking about culture and society and things like that. So there's a range of different topics, but you don't have to have an opinion on every single thing. And it's not really possible to memorize answers for every single thing. So instead, try to just be human about it. Try to have an interaction with the examiner that is enjoyable for them. You're having a conversation with a human being. You can say things like, sports, it's not my favourite topic, honestly. However, I come from a country where football is huge. So my family has always been football supporter. Things like that, where you don't have to have an extremely comprehensive and impressive opinion about every single thing. It's simply about how you can continue and evolve a conversation about that thing, even if it's not your favorite topic, and try to vibe with the examiner a little bit. They're less likely to try and trip you up and say things that it's going to make you speak spontaneously if you're already speaking more spontaneously. Okay, so to give some more context about the difference between the general and the academic exams. So there are 4 parts, of course: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. The speaking and the listening sections are the same, whether you're taking the general or the academic IELTS exams, but the reading and the writing are different. So for many people, they think, okay, great, I can speak English, as you were saying, yeah, and I understand when I'm watching movies and I'm having conversations, I understand what people are saying in English, even at a natural speed. Great. Oftentimes, though, they don't prepare for the exam enough. And it's such an easy mistake to make, to think, oh, I know English, I don't need to prepare for the exam. One great thing you were just talking about there is that if you are prepared for the exam, you're going to feel a lot more confident and therefore perform a lot better on the day. But also, there's an amazing amount of energy and cognitive effort that goes into reading instructions for the first time and understanding them. So imagine you're on exam day, you're already stressed, you're already panicking, and then you've got to read instructions and understand them for the first time. You're just making it harder for yourself if you don't prepare. So, as there's 4 different sections in the IELTS exam, I recommend working on one section every few weeks. Ideally, work on one section for a month and then move on to the next one. Also have a range of different exercises if you can. So, when it comes to the writing exam, and I'm going to speak today about the academic writing exam rather than the general one, because a lot of our students here, I live in Saudi Arabia, they're preparing to take the academic IELTS exam, and a lot of them want to take it before Ramadan, which is in February. So they need to start thinking about preparing for it now. Okay, so one of the things that we are helping our students to do in November at Intrepid English is to start thinking about and preparing for the academic IELTS writing exam. And we've prepared some mini lessons every single day during the month of November. And they're just 5 minutes, maybe maximum 10 minutes per lesson, just to give people a quick overview of one particular small element of the IELTS writing exam. That's free on YouTube. So if you subscribe to the Intrepid English YouTube channel, every day you'll get a little notification that there's a new video to watch. And all it takes is 5 minutes to start getting used to what's in the exam, what the examiners are looking for, very important, and just to give you a little exercise to do so that you can start working towards improving your writing skills. And then for Intrepid English students, so they're members of the Intrepid English Academy, we've got a full course which takes that lesson every day and then gives the quiz questions, gives more information about the exam, and gives a little exercise that they can complete with their teacher so that they can get actionable feedback from an experienced IELTS teacher. And the lessons are every single day, but if you only have time for one lesson with a teacher every week, then you've got a weekly writing assignment that you can do with your teacher as well. So I wanted to talk about the writing exam today because November is IELTS Academic Writing Month at Intrepid English. Let's talk about the marking criteria a little bit more. So one element that you spoke about that's the same in the speaking as it is in the writing is coherence and cohesion. Jo, can you tell us a little bit more about what coherence is, what cohesion is in the IELTS? What are they looking for really in that marking criteria?
Well, it's to do with being easy to understand and speaking in a smooth way. If I'm talking about the speaking here, sounding smooth and natural without lots of pauses, and as, yeah, not that.
Yeah, exactly. And in the writing exam, so coherence and cohesion is similar to the marking criteria in the speaking, in that you need to show that your ideas flow coherently. So a lot of people think, right, I've got my writing task 1 here, okay, which is looking at some data, looking at a piece of information, and then explaining it, just describing what it is. A lot of people read it and they start writing straight away. And that really sets you up for going off track, having incoherent thinking, not having a structure to your writing. So one thing I always recommend to students is take a few minutes. It takes a couple of minutes to write out a very short plan of what you're going to say. Okay, so you look at the question and you know, okay, I need to write an introduction. That's going to be my first bullet point here. Second bullet point, look at the question again. Okay, it's from this question, I can see there are 2 main points. So it makes sense that your first paragraph is going to be about the first point and your second paragraph is going to be about the second point. Okay, and that's all you need to do. It's a very short exercise. Introduction, first paragraph is the first point, second paragraph is the second point. And then you can keep looking back to that plan when you start writing and you can go, okay, well, I've started to talk about the first point here. I've got one main point for my paragraph. And then I'll go back to my plan. What was the second paragraph going to be about? Oh, it's this one here. And then you can start the second point. So coherence and cohesion simply means keeping your ideas flowing nicely. You're not talking about this, then talking about this, then talking about this, then talking about this, and then losing track of time, panicking, because remember, you've got adrenaline flowing as well. It's exam day. You're feeling anxious. If you take a few seconds to understand the question, plan your answer, and then move forward, that helps with the speaking and it helps with the writing and it helps your ideas to flow really nicely. So one of the other marking criterion that we should talk about that's the same kind of thing in the writing and in the speaking parts of the IELTS exams is called Lexical Resource. So would you like to tell someone who's preparing for the IELTS exam what lexical resource actually means?
Yes, lexical resource means words and vocabulary. So there are different levels of vocabulary you could try to study and memorize from different band levels. But also, it's really important to get as much vocabulary from lots of different topics. So, topic specific vocabulary is really useful rather than general words which are not so specific. Also,
Yeah.
being able to paraphrase is a very important skill. You might be asked to paraphrase, and it's a way that you can really show that you've understood what you're dealing with if you can express one piece of vocabulary in a sentence that defines it.
Exactly. So one way of paraphrasing could be changing the voice in the sentence to from active to passive. For example, instead of my grandfather built this house in 1960, instead you change it to this house was built in 1960 by my grandfather. So that's changing the voice in the sentence. So that's one example of paraphrasing there. Of course, when we're talking about lexical resource, we want to then add extra vocabulary in there that will elevate the sentence a little bit more. So to further this example here, this terraced house was built painstakingly by my grandfather in 1960. You can use more advanced vocabulary to paint a picture of what you're saying. That's true in the speaking part of the IELTS exam as well as in the writing part. Gathering a nice phrase bank of more advanced vocabulary is great. Using it correctly is even better. So don't just use a word if you don't really understand what it means. And don't be tempted to start collecting band 9 vocabulary if you can't, for example, pronounce it in the speaking part of the exam as well. So further to your point there about topic-specific vocabulary, let's take the topic, your favorite topic of travel. Can you give us some higher band vocabulary? So maybe talking about band 7, 8 or 9 vocabulary about travel, and maybe give some example sentences where you can actually use that more advanced vocabulary to talk about it. So if I were to, a band 4 sentence would be, when I'm on holiday, I like to travel to the seaside. How could you elevate that answer to a higher band? What kind of vocabulary would you use?
I could say that when I do my favourite hike by the Seven Sisters on the south coast near where I live, I love looking out from the tops of the white chalk cliffs across the expansive horizon and the crests of the waves breaking against the shore, and watching the soaring seabirds as they swoop around, surfing on the currents of the air. The vistas are majestic and that kind of stuff.
Wonderful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So that's using elevated vocabulary or lexical resource in a way that is appropriate for the sentence. It paints a picture. And also in the speaking exam, the examiner's going to feel your passion there. They're going to feel like, okay, this person isn't just repeating something they've memorized from ChatGPT. They are talking about something that they genuinely enjoy. They're passionate about it. So this is how lexical resource as a marking criterion fits into the overall idea of producing a good, compelling answer in the speaking exam. And of course, you can use such vocabulary in the writing exam too, if it's appropriate and if it's fitting, as long as you're spelling it correctly.
Quite a useful exercise for the speaking is to look at a strange picture and then trying to describe that picture in different band levels. So exactly as you just did, but I've got a very visual memory. But if you look at the picture and you describe it very basically, and then you keep on taking it up a notch and up a notch and up a notch, and that's quite a good practice for that activity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And doing it with a teacher who can then correct your pronunciation is really, really important. And to go back to the structure of your writing answer as well, students fall into the trap of writing something in a very poetic way that's showing off their expansive vocabulary. Great. But then you get off track. If you don't keep going back to the structure, you get off track. So for task 2, you've got more freedom to give your opinion about things. In task 1 of the IELTS writing, you should not give your opinion about the data. You should, in fact, do that in task 2. You've got space there to talk in a more open way. You've got time to do that and a higher word count as well. So using this more advanced vocabulary is great, as long as it's not taking you off track. And if you do find yourself thinking, oh, okay, well, I went on a bit of a tangent there, then it's okay, because you can come back to your structure. You can go, okay, what was I going to talk about in paragraph 2? Right, I'm going to talk about that now. So, thinking about this holistically, thinking about the marking criteria and thinking about the vocabulary, it might seem quite overwhelming. Oh, there's so much to think about. But that's why it's so important to start practicing early. Don't just have one mock exam a week before the exam, or even worse, just turn up to the exam without preparing. If you're doing it right, you learn a little bit more about the exam and what the examiners are looking for week by week, day by day, so that overall you're gathering this knowledge, you're practicing, you're getting advice and feedback from your teacher. And then 3 months down the line, when you take the exam, you've had a lot of practice, you're feeling much more confident, you know what to expect. and then you won't be so panicked on exam day. In fact, ideally, on exam day, you turn up and you're excited to finally show what you've been working on for months, hopefully. And then you need to call your teacher afterwards and tell them that you've
You
got a bad
do.
date.
You really do.
So if you're preparing for the IELTS exam, for example, if you are hoping to take the exam early next year, either you want to have the exam done by Ramadan starting, that's a big thing here because obviously it's extremely difficult to study anything when you're fasting. So a lot of people want to complete their IELTS exam, have it khalas, as they say here in Arabic, before February, then now's the time to start preparing for it. So for those preparing for the academic IELTS exam, if writing is the most difficult part for you, I recommend starting off with that. So in November, Intrepid English is offering the IELTS exam preparation course specifically for writing skills. If you only have 5 minutes per day, subscribe to our YouTube channel and get that mini lesson every single day in November. If you really want some more intensive, personalised feedback, join the Intrepid English Academy, and an experienced IELTS teacher will help you by giving you feedback on your writing assignments. But you can also study alone if you want, using the quizzes and the assignments that we give you in the academy. And then, if you wish, Jo actually offers an English retreat. In the UK, each year you do a total immersion retreat, don't you? Would you like to tell the viewers about that, Jo?
I'm in Brighton in England on the south coast next to the sea, which is why I talk about the sea a lot. And I'm offering 7-day small group, fully immersive retreats aimed at upping your confidence and fluency and cohesion in speaking to make you feel good when you're speaking English and to stop feeling stressed and feeling blocked. So yeah, come to the beautiful south coast. It's a lovely sunny day outside. Not always, but
Great.
that's where the retreats are, and I'd love to see you here.
Lovely. Okay, great. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really nice to pick your brain about the IELTS exam.
Yeah, well, it's lovely to see you again.